Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Conquer the Clutter for April the 16th. We're getting there, the warm weather. Um, Thank you all for your expressions of condolence. Um, Aunt Lorna was a much loved person to me, and a real lesson in how to be true to who you are and still be good to everybody else. So where we are, Aunt Lauren, I hope you're up there enjoying getting ready for Easter with all of your brothers and sisters and cousins and we're down here and we're doing okay now. And the other thing I did and I wanted to share with you is I took the week off, which is unheard of for me. And a little bit of it was grief, although at her age, it shouldn't have been a surprise. Um, but it gave me time to do something that feels like a luxury to most of us, and that is unfettered to be able to reflect. And one of the things that kept coming back to my mind was consequences. Now, this wasn't born of anything that happened with Aunt Lorna. Um, it was, well, maybe age, but it was about something that had struck me very clearly and very loudly a few weeks before. And um, with every single thing we do, good, bad, and indifferent. There are consequences, all right? And as I said a moment ago, a few weeks ago, I was working with a gentleman who has a profound hoarding situation. And as I went through items with him, helping and coaching him to make decisions he could live with, one word, all right, kept jumping into my mind. And I made my mind up at that moment that I needed to talk to all of you about this. Um, it's not a profound idea, okay? It isn't anything that is terribly unusual, but the urgency and the fact that consequences are a baseline to everything that I have talked about to all of you over the past 5 years now. Um, and it was unrelenting. It kept coming back and coming back. And it occurred to me that we've never really talked about consequences. All right. And generally, consequences have unilaterally a negative connotation. But there are consequences with good endings. And we certainly know plenty about consequences. There also are consequences, more likely. What I talk about refers to consequences with undesirable endings. Right. So, but consequences that allow for positives, if we recognize it, um, make them happen. And how do we do that? All right. How do we, the negative consequences are going to happen. But do you remember a long time ago and in the Conquer the Clutter book, I said at a very challenging time in my life, um, I realized instantly, thanks to a glorious sunrise at a terrible time in my life, that really grabbed my full attention. I was overwhelmed by it. It was so immediate and so lovely, um, that even at the worst times, there are positives at the same time, all right, that are happening. So, how do we get out from under the influence of the one we try to avoid to reach the other? All right. Now, maybe I'm oversimplifying, but what are the questions that we are asking ourselves at that time? the same time we're in hot pursuit, okay, of unrelenting pursuit, actually, because you keep coming back every week of the answers we want or the answers that we are so searching for. The bottom line is there are internal and external consequences. Have you ever stopped to really think about that? I know you're aware of it, but is it a fleeting thing that in the moment you feel it, you think it, it's there and it's gone, and you really don't grab it and bring it back and dissect the thing so that you can figure out what your path is to um, the responses that you want out of it. Okay, so at one end of our distress, all right, generally, and many people have talked about this, is procrastination, all right? And we all know by now that this creates an immense challenge. There are two ways procrastination can be a problem for us. People who procrastinate may suffer certain internal consequences, feelings that range from irritation and regret to intense self-judgment and despair. And that certainly was this gentleman I was working with. And to the outside person observing, all right, Joe Blow, many of these people appear to be doing just fine. That happens a lot with the people that I work with. Are you one of them? Are you one of those people that on the outside are passing? You're in turmoil too frequently internally, but on the outside, everything looks hunky-dory, right? Many people are highly successful. And in my experience, are largely deaf to their internal voice that repeats and repeats to every compliment that they receive. And this is so destructive. And every accomplishment, everything that they achieve, they diminish. All right. And in their own mind, they do it with a message that runs something like this. If only they knew the truth about what I go home to, they wouldn't feel that way. I must be unauthentic. They just completely disqualify the positives in themselves. Know this: nobody ever, I don't care who they are, what they have, how smart they are, how capable they are, nobody ever overcame anything difficult by thinking and feeling less about themselves. All right. So my talk to you today about consequences is to help you realize at the very moment you're feeling that negative, stop. That is true. There is a negative. All right. But it is not the sum total of who you are and what you're capable of. All right. So don't exaggerate it. Don't let it be like the tsunami that comes in and just wipes away anything else. It is true. Two things can be true at the same time, even when they seem to be contradictory. All right. It's an awful word, and it has horrible, destructive consequences. There certainly are external consequences. Sometimes the external consequences come as a surprise, a shock even, right? You discover mice. You discover something else. You discover that thing that you've been looking for has been damaged as a result of being lost in the piles. We haven't sometimes even thought about possible repercussions, all right? And it's the repercussion or consequence that I want you to slow down and think of. Your homework this week, write this down, get your paper and pens out, all right, is every single time for the next week when you're making any choice at all, the first thing I want you to practice is, because you need to habituate this for it to kick into gear automatically. All right. I want you to really focus on this week so that it comes easily, organically. Ask yourself, what is the consequence of this? And is that the consequence I'm looking for? Does that consequence help me move forward? It might be a negative. All right. This week I lost a dear loved one, and last week rather, sorry. And I decided her life had to count for more than sitting around crying, moaning and groaning. All right. And I made myself do something I never do, and they take a whole week off. Not because I'm driven to work or I'm a workaholic. I really love what I do. All right. So there was a cost to me. And what did I do? I spent the week some grieving, but reflecting. All right. That's a luxury in my world. Time to reflect. All right. So, whatever the possible repercussions, all right, that we have been in this profound search, and it has to be a significant search that you're engaged in. You come here every week. Okay. A blind search, unquestioning search for a result that we're looking for. What is that result? Some consequences can be mild. They're just a minimal interruption, right? Like a little bit of saying to yourself, oh, I don't know. When you're trying to make decisions, for instance, all right? You didn't pay your speeding bill on time, or that light you went through when it wasn't exactly green, and they caught you on the cameras, and now you have to pay for it. Okay, in fact, you have to pay double because you didn't pay it the first time. You procrastinated. All right, that's a minor thing. It's important not to do it because you might be the collision in the intersection as you're running that light. It could have a lot different consequence than the consequence you've paid to date. So hopefully when that happens, they stay small for you and you can afford the bill. All right. But what is the backstory to all of that rushing? Isn't that really the problem? Nobody that I know of deliberately says, oh, gee, the light's going to turn. Gee, this is like going to be a aha moment. I'm going to go through that light. All right. Nobody does that. Generally, it happens because you're rushing or you're distracted. So, what is the backstory to those near misses of consequences? Could they just be a little pop-up reminder of there's something here that is not in your best interest? Or if it isn't in your best interest, it's not likely to be in the best interest of the people you affect by doing it otherwise, because mostly the things we do don't just have a consequence for us. All right. And if you don't stop and ask yourself, how did this happen? All right. All that striving and all that repeating will end up in repeat, 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 repeat. And that's called self-punishment. Okay. Now, all of that, all right, you fill in the blank. What are you doing right now? What are you doing right now that really isn't working for you? And what are the little alarm bells? Write them down. What are the little irritants? Because those are your hints. All is not well. This is an expression my mother used to have. All is not well in Glockamorrow. All right. It's just I have the liberty to ignore this, but you know what? Like it is an indicator we're not on track here. What are those things? And what is your consequence? And how often do you have to pay that bill? Now, if it was a bill of any other kind and you had to pay it that often, well, running lights, you'd probably get arrested, but you had to pay that bill repeatedly, okay, wouldn't you lower your consumption of whatever you're doing, whatever is causing that, or cancel the contract? All right. Why are we prepared to pay the same consequences? Why are you prepared to pay the same consequences over and over and over again, as though it is impossible? If it feels impossible, here's a hint. Break it down. Break it down and keep breaking it down until you can carry that portion. You can always come back for more and do more at another time when you are available for yourself. If it's too heavy, break it down and keep breaking it down until you can do that little bit. That's why I recommend, all right, 15 minutes. Most people can do 15 minutes of the thing they least want to do. That is my effort to coach you in breaking it down so that whatever it is remains doable. Now, how many people here, when I say the 15 minutes, say, well, that's never going to achieve anything. And when I did 15 minutes and I came back and I had a look at it, I felt like not very much had changed. We're not looking at magic here, people. We're looking at habituating a behavior that you can repeat. You do 15 minutes a day, and at the other end of this spectrum of in and things out, you don't recreate the problem. You work on the shopping or not shopping. You work on the not putting things down, putting them away. You look at saying to yourself, just do it now. It never gets easier. If you're not backfilling the problem, you are going to make progress, and it's going to be lasting progress. I have news for you. It does work. All right. We're smart people. Smart enough anyway. Why are we rushing so fast? So mindlessly? That's what I told myself last week. Elaine, you're not feeling well. There's nothing really wrong. Somebody dying at 93, even though she had all pistons firing. All right. It's not a surprise, Elaine. All right. What is it? And I thought, I need to give myself time to reflect on what is this impact, not just for me, but what does it mean? All right. It wouldn't be bothering me this much. I wouldn't feel so depleted. So, yes, I could do my work, but I just don't want to feel up to it. All right, that's unusual. That's one of those little pop-ups. Listen to it, whatever form it takes in your life. Give yourself the time to figure out the best indicators of what the real issue is that's holding you back. All right, and it will be individual to each of you. So if we continue to rush fast, so mindlessly, really, when we're going that fast, that we don't see the signals, okay? The signals of what we're doing that adds to the problem, all right? Either actively or passively, what we do or we don't do. Try not brushing your teeth for 2 weeks. That's a passive consequence, right? It doesn't all have to be profound. Every single thing we do and don't do has a consequence. And that is not the sword of Damocles over your head. That's just the natural law. All right. I want today's podcast to be about let's just stop it. Let's just stop ignoring the consequences. Let's just stop interpreting negative consequences as punishment. It isn't necessarily, all right? It sometimes, as those consequences become firmer and deeper and bigger, it's sort of wake up, stupid. You don't want this. All right. I'm not calling you stupid. I'm saying inside ourselves, duh. How many times do I want this thing? And what is causing it? And I don't have to turn it around on a dime. I have to contribute to something that I'm not doing or stopping something I am doing that is leading to this. What is the consequence? And do I want to pay that consequence? Or is that how I want to spend my time or whatever other resource I'm investing? Okay, let's well and truly, finally, once and for all, figure it out. Let's face down those consequences. Let's deconstruct them into small, doable tasks. Even if the task is a challenge, the challenge, overcoming that challenge to any degree, sets in motion a process that you know you can have confidence in doing. And the task, the challenge, the process that you need to lead yourself out of here, you will be creating. It will be unique to you. All right, let's get off that merry-go-round. It isn't going anywhere we want to go, or you wouldn't be here. You're not coming here to listen to me rattle on every week. You're coming for an inspiration, or you're coming for an idea that energizes you so that you can do that thing, those things, tiny chunks at a time, people. In the beginning, okay, all that going in circles might have seemed like an innocent consequence. As you're learning to do something, as you're developing the ability to habituate the kind of choices and behaviors that are going to lead you where you want to go. It feels like when you don't get it right, in the beginning, it feels like an innocent consequence. Less, not so right now. All right. What would you say today? Write it down. For how long have you been trying? And what is it you've been trying to deal with? Be specific. I'm going to give you a minute. Take out your pens and paper and write that thing down. The top 3 consequences that you will have or are still paying. That's the next thing. What is it you're doing or not doing? What are the top 3 consequences that you have? And how long have you been paying those? And now write down how much longer you want to go on paying that. How much of your life, how much of your energy, which is a gift that you're given. How long do you want to go on paying that? And even if you've largely come out the other end, please write down, what has it cost you? What has it cost you? And know that pretty much, unless you live alone, that consequence is shared. Some consequence is shared by the people who live with you. What's more important? the thing that's challenging you or them? And I'll tell you right now, I don't mean to get maudlin here, but as Aunt Lorna was passing, all right, I am sure, certainly myself, and her children, all right, it was the relationship. It was how she connected, how she, the love she shared, the messages she shared, the training she had shared, the example she had set. The relationship is what mattered, not how much she had accumulated, not anything she was going to bequeath to anybody. All right. What do you want to stand for? What will you regret when your moment comes? Again, I don't want to be maudlin, but that is an inevitable consequence of living. Is this stuff really that important? And it is important. It is. It wouldn't be there. You're not incapable. All right. But if it feels that way, it's only a feeling that you are applying the meaning to. It is never, almost never, the event itself that harms us. It is the meaning that we apply to it. It is what we tell ourselves. And remember, it's important that you tell yourself the best truth that you can face, because that truth leads you someplace you do want to go. The untruth we tell ourselves, or the exaggeration of importance that we tell ourselves, keeps us exactly where we are. And as much as I like seeing your smiling faces, okay, we could get together some other way on Zoom, all right, and celebrate. That would be okay too. Don't stay stuck. Your life and your relationships are worth way, way, way more than anything you have or anything that's holding you back. So this fellow I was working with wasn't feeling all that good about himself. Well, really wasn't feeling good about himself. And the self-judgment was difficult to hear. And I was feeling terrible for him. All right. Feelings of inadequacy, sadness, guilt, being a fraud, successful on the outside, but not so much on the inside. Clearly not on the inside. All right. His private, personal life, sometimes a panic. Am I ever going to be able? What happens if I get discovered? Depending on somebody else coming and helping him make decisions was like, this should not be. All right. What if I answered the door and I had to open it and they see what's behind me? What would my children say? What would my parents say? What would my neighbors say if they knew the truth? The feeling, and because it had gotten ahead of him, all right, the feeling every day of never doing enough. Who goes back to something, a task, where every time you do it, you come out of it feeling like it wasn't enough? No one in their right mind. If you feel that way, you've got good mental health. You're probably a little depressed, but on the other side, you've got a grasp on reality. All right. You're defeating yourself. Nobody ever overcame anything difficult by feeling less about themselves. The question to ask yourself when you feel that I didn't do enough is, what do I need to do differently? And how do I access the resources to do that regularly. The other is a trap. What a prison to sign up for, because it means that we never feel free. This is the consequence, right? We never feel entirely free to enjoy the pleasures we've been granted in our life. And they're out there. I know every time I cuddle my dogs, I'd say, oh, what a gift. What a gift. All right? Because they never talk back like my children did. Just teasing. My kids will probably never listen to this podcast. All right. So, what everybody else seems to be enjoying, you can't enjoy. You can't let yourself enjoy. Many of you. Why? Because there's still work to do. The job is never done. How long do you want that to go on? And every time a person comes home and they see the piles, they tell me, or just even undone tasks that are standing there waiting for them, going, yeah, you left me out. It doesn't feel like we have the right to just relax and fill the tank. Are you doing that to yourself? And this is a prosaic metaphor, but if you went out and your car was on empty and you started it, how long would you expect that car to work? Until it ran out of gas. Are you out of gas? Are you out of gas? And do you sign up for even more emptying your tank with all of this negative self-talk? It depends on what we tell ourselves. And when I'm not talking about Fantasy Island, all right? I'm talking about the truth. But even when the truth is not a positive, it's a negative. At the same time the negatives exist, there are positives that exist as well. And I'm not talking about more shopping. I'm not talking about convincing yourself that saving those newspapers is a good thing. All right. I'm talking about seeing the truth and thinking, this isn't what I want. I want this instead. How do I get there? What is the consequence? What would the consequence be if I tried little by little, 15 minutes a day, to do the thing that I find difficult? And I sacrosanct that in my schedule. Unless war is declared, there is ephemeral bleed or projectile vomiting. That is what I'm doing in that 15 minutes every single day. If I get the best offer, I will accept it, but it will have to be rescheduled to later in the day or earlier in the day. I have a date with my future. I have a date with the future I want for myself and the people who care about me. When we repeat that pattern often enough, many people tell me that they wonder whether they ever had competence. How can this happen if I'm so smart and I'm so successful? This is the truth about me. No, it is not the truth. No, it is not the truth. We cannot, none of us can be summed up in one adjective. Okay. We are more than that. All of us. At our worst, we are more than that. And what does it matter what my skills or my talents are proof of? That I'm capable. What does that matter? What does all of it matter if I have to live in an environment that tells me nonstop, I'm not done. You didn't do it well enough. Whatever you did do, or now, if you will, and you don't have to show this to anybody, write down the consequences now of the cost that you've been paying. How much money have you spent? How much time that you could have been enjoying something or contributing something to the life of the person that cares about you? How much time that you would like to have right now have you spent? Because you don't get time back. And what would you want to have that time be used for what purpose right now? How many lost opportunities have you had while you were grasping the opportunities that were tempting you because they were just too good to miss, or you were just too overwhelmed to get up and make a difference? Are any of those consequences serious, like they've lowered your credit rating and now everything you buy on credit, you're going to pay a higher interest rate for? That's wasted money, not just wasted time. That's wasted resources. Does the guilt, does the fatigue, does the wearing has it distracted you in other times of your day as well? And when you walk by and you see those piles, all right, do you just kind of close up, put blinders on? When you put blinders on, people, yeah, you miss the bad, but you miss the good too. That's the thing about blinders. They're a negative protector, which means your whole darn day is negative. And then what do you have for a positive? Because we seek positive. We try to avoid negative. We have a negative bias. But while we're avoiding negative, what are we doing? We're looking for the positive. And what is the positive? The positive is escape. That's what you're habituating. How is that ever going to serve you? When you remember those tasks that are still there waiting for you, have you ever had an accident, for instance, tripped over something, suffered a physical injury, or an almost physical injury? Has it cost you relationships, or has it cost you the quality of relationships? It certainly is costing you a relationship with yourself, for sure. That's a dead certainty. What positive, happy things do you avoid because you can't possibly do them in your environment, or you can't have people in to share them? And what do you turn to for solace? Because when we hurt, we seek solace. What do you turn to? Shopping? You're getting used, people. You're getting used. It is never going to be the answer. That's like taking the wrong medication for an infection. In fact, it's like feeding the infection. What are you using right now for solace? And when you keep yourself busy, 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 all right? Is that your solace? Just go so fast it can't catch up with you. It's waiting for you when you go home. It's waiting for you. And it is not an old friend. It's like that stain you can't get out of the carpet. And you see it and think, oh. Anything that makes you go, oh, we need a counter idea. All right. That empties you every single time. How do you soothe yourself? Into every life, a little rain must fall. All right. But if you're running on empty, that rain turns to sleet and driving hail because you're empty. You don't have the resilience. How's it working for you? Are some of the consequences self-criticism, acceptance, and taking responsibility is one thing, all right? But when you turn it into a negative and you hit yourself with it, you slap yourself with it, that self-criticism is destructive. When you recognize you're not on course, your next question has to be, what is wrong right now in this moment? Not the whole big story, all right? Right now, what's wrong? And what is doable? What one little thing is doable? I hear self-criticism almost universally in the beginning, often followed by embarrassment or shame. If somebody got something wrong somewhere, they weren't deliberately hurting somebody, for instance, they just got it wrong, would you embarrass them and shame them? Would you? So tell me why it's a good idea to do it to yourself. Wouldn't it be a better idea to say, that's not who I am? I know I made that mistake. I am going to spend a little bit of time, not going to reinvent the wheel. It's not going to be my search for life. Understanding what I did that was not true for me, right? And then I'm going to do one thing about it. Now, this week, for instance, I'll tell you, the time to reflect, I'm now walking my dogs. I made appointments weekly for physio for a shoulder that I injured in Uganda. How long ago was that? I've been getting by. I've been managing. But you know what? No. How much time do you want to give yourself this week to reflect on, if I don't want more of this, all right, because that's all you're going to get. It's not going to change itself. If I don't want more of this, what do I need to do instead? Good. And that will help you deal with whatever anxiety and dread you have when you see it. You know that people describe it as punch in the gut, frankly. Still there. And then what they do to themselves in their head, constant nagging, all right? And it just eats away and distracts them from the ability to concentrate. Guilt replaces energy, and self-blame undermines progress. Tiny progress, people. We're not talking solution, we're talking progress. And the other thing too it does for many people, even though they escape to Netflix or shopping or whatever else it is, all right, the excuses they give themselves, yes, there are feeders, all right, there are feeders, but an unhappy childhood is not the consequence. This is not the consequence of that. All right. Not dealing with whatever the issues are, that's the consequence. That's the problem. There are answers. All right. Because when things get out of control and stay out of control, not feeling that they have the right to enjoy other activities because the work isn't done. And when someone compliments them on one thing, to dismiss it in their own mind because they know the situation they go home to. Or in your car, okay? All the stuff that's in the back seat or in the trunk that gets added to. Have you ever experienced panic when you see it? Have you worn out your mental health enough that you live with some level of depression that isn't basic to maybe a chemical imbalance or another reason? Do you feel panic? All right. That you you might be pulled back into a situation where you lose control. And so you stall out, you freeze. All right. That fear of being overtaken by the excitement of the temptation, of the impulse, just one time. Okay. This time, because this time it makes sense for 10 minutes. Nobody ever turned a television on. Nobody ever took a drink of something. Nobody ever did whatever the pattern is that is habituated, that is avoidance. Nobody ever did that for 10 minutes. All right. So, when a little bit of this, careful. Do you lose sleep? Does the truth become so painful, so fatiguing and unrelenting that you choose denial? How many people here today are or have felt isolated, trapped, and alienated from the very things they need to make the change about? I'm almost hesitant to ask you this, but maybe it's not a bad thing to take an inventory, all right, of those things that you avoid, the things you need to do, resources you need to have, help you need to get. Maybe it's important at this point to take an inventory because if you are even to some degree, all right, paying consequences, wouldn't it be better to make some of those things a priority? I've got lots of excuses for why I didn't continue with physio. Couldn't fit it into the schedule. Okay. Maybe reminding yourself of what you have achieved. Because if you're upright and you're coming here every week, that's an achievement. And I'm betting you have probably not looked at it for a very long time, but you have other achievements. And that's what you need to focus on. That is the person I am, not this. This has happened. I have done this. But if I have done it, I can undo it. All right. Ask yourself right now, write it down so you remember. It's not a fleeting thought. What skills have you learned? And how you really want to keep those skills and strategies close at hand. How are you going to do that? Because when you're feeling down, they probably aren't going to be the first thought you have. So, how are you going to have a reminder of whoops, 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 that was a slip? So now the next question, and my final question is, right now, what do you need? What do you need to help you keep moving forward to cross that finish line. Where is it? And if you're not sure, write down 3 places where it might be. It's a big enough need that it's not just located in one place. There are probably component parts. Maybe a part you're responsible for, maybe a part that somebody else needs to help you, and maybe there are resources that you need too. The answer is never one thing, people. It's never one thing. Now, how do you get enough of it to make enough of a difference? What are you not doing that you know you do need? Underline the one thing. It's probably a biggie. The one thing, right, that you do need, you don't have enough of it, but it would make a difference. So, how about beginning today? All right, you start asking yourself those 3 questions and don't stop. When you get to where is it, the next question is the most important. How do I get enough of it to make enough of a difference? Because you will learn from that. And I want to end with a little story that is true, and I have the person's permission. I've been working with a lovely, very elderly woman. And as much as the people in her building, the management in her building, really liked her, and she was a sound tenant, she paid her rent on time, she was agreeable, okay. You literally, you got in the door and you could hardly move. I'm not exaggerating. Steve, myself, Sarah, hardly move. And the first thing she did was she took responsibility. Yep, I did this, and this is why I think I did it, and I don't want it anymore. But I'm having a hard time making decisions because a lot of things. So we sat down and we talked, and she'd already done that part of knowing that she would feel resistance, but understanding that the consequence was she was going to be stuck in this, and the landlord could not legally allow that. So she had double-edged motivation, right? And so she and I sat down, and on the first session, and they were 2-hour sessions every second week. So she invested as well. All right. She wasn't looking for the answer and that it not have any consequence. And so she and I sat down and we talked about what the priorities were. And we came up with a list, and whatever she had to do, all right, and having energy wasn't one of those. She wanted to help, and she trusted me that in this really severe type of situation, she was to sit in that chair, I was to sit in this chair, and they were going to bring the stuff to us, and there wasn't going to be any distractions other than we're looking at this, we're assessing this, does it meet your criteria? And so what does that mean for the answer? All right. And that was against her nature. She was a very, very much a push up her sleeves and dig in kind of person. All right. So she made a lot of personal taking responsibility. All right. And it was hard. It was very, very hard for her to make the decisions. But I want to just zero in on one day. So as we excavated the apartment, and she made the decisions, and we rehoused the things that were kept, and she donated or discarded the things that weren't going to be kept. A lot of people have benefited. But they were things that she was okay with. They met the criteria for the decision that was applied to them, and she was good with that. And she persisted, right? One day, Steve and Sarah brought a raft of things that we're going through, and I picked up one box of about maybe like this, and we opened it up, and I remember my internal voice was, "Oh no, oh no, there are like this is inside." Okay, I'm sharing this with you, and it was like there are a million little things in this box. Oh dear, this is going to be a tough one. And I started to hand them to her, and she said, "I think this is it." And it turned out that of all the things, now you had to imagine it, a two-bedroom apartment, or a pretty spacious two-bedroom apartment. She wasn't wealthy. There was a lot of stuff if you couldn't move, right? But really and truly, that day we found it. And it was a box that contained innumerable things from the most cherished times in her life, the people who had loved her the most, the things that she was keeping as keepsakes. And they weren't just sentimental in importance to her. They were also affirmations of who she was and that she was lovable and she wasn't alone, that these things reminded her of all of the love, and all of the achievements, that she had, and just tender little things like somebody made her an apron, but it was handmade, and it clearly had taken a lot of care, and a lot of love had gone into it. And do you know, she said, and Sarah and I had to choke it back. Um, she said, "You know what? Nothing else matters. This box, this one box is worth everything." And it was lost. I knew I had it, but I thought it was lost, and I lost hope that I was ever going to see it again, ever going to be able, to be able to access and reminisce over these things. And so what we did was we agreed on a bookshelf, and we took things out of the bookshelf that had been important up till that point, but certainly didn't measure up on the box. And we laid it all out, in the bookshelf. And every time we would come after that, she would say, "I had the best week. I sat down and I remembered da 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 da, and that made me remember this." And she said, "That's the first time." She said, like, it's like you guys have given me the most important part of my life back. And I've had parts of my life," she said, "frankly, that aren't worth remembering." And I thought, Sarah and I left, and I, in 23 and a half years, I've had some wonderful moments. And that is one, that just seeing an elderly, vulnerable person, all right, be able to be 15 years younger the next week in energy, in focus, in what she could, summon up to support herself and remind herself she was worth everything, that she had done. She was up to it. Nothing could defeat her. And so, I wanted to finish today because that is a consequence. All right, that is a consequence of doing it your way with the right help. Whatever help it is, I'm not pitching here, but whatever that help is that you need, don't delay in getting it because you're worth it. Right?
Can you do it? Yes, you can. Yes, you can.